Well, hey everybody, Mr. Delcourt here, coming at you with a little guidance on how to complete the Maine Bear Harvest Analysis. So stick with me today. We're going to walk through the entire assignment from building the map to a couple of graphs and thinking about some of those analysis questions. So let's jump right in here. Let's take a look at our Maine Bear Harvest Analysis. If we look here on today's assignment, we can open it up right here. And I'm going to put this in Notability to work on it. We're going to create a new note. I'm going to put this under my Maine Fish and Wildlife Work section, import, and open that thing up. And here we go. So part of the Maine Bear Harvest Analysis, very similar to our deer analysis we did last week. We're going to take a look at bear harvest by town. And we've got our Maine WMD map, and we've got the wildlife management districts laid over the towns here on this map, which is kind of neat. We've got a cool table over here that shows us harvest of bears in 2022 by WMD. But we're kind of interested in creating that similar kind of blot map we did with the deer map last week. We're going to do the same thing with bears. We're just going to follow slightly different guidelines. You can see kind of more consistency across the state, but smaller numbers. And the map doesn't come out quite as distinct, but it's still really interesting to look at and think about, little hotbeds of bear harvest and what may cause that. And we'll get right into that today. So if we take a look here, I like to start, with our blue towns. The lowest rating are towns that harvest between 1 and 3 bears. If we don't have any bears harvested in a town, we're just going to leave it blank. And I come up here and use the highlighter option, and we'll go blue here. And I've got it set on a pretty large dot, and I'm just coming through in each town that is between 1 and 3. I'm going to highlight, coming along here. And we're going to work our way across the state doing this. Now, I come up here and check. Let's imagine I had gotten all of those blue ones done. I look here and I see green are all of our towns between 4 and 9. So I switch to green, and we start grabbing all these towns between 4 and 9. Coming around, imagine again, we would work our way through most of the state doing that. We work our way up to our next color code, which would be yellow, anywhere from 10 to 15 bears. And we'll see that in areas around here. You won't find quite, I guess, as many of the yellows, oranges, and reds, but they're around, and you'll see them. So there we go. Now, our orange is going to be anything, I believe, from 16 to 25. And again, these are going to be even more rare. But here we go. Here's a couple oranges here. T4R7, and that looks like maybe Portage there as well. So yeah, we'll use those towns as we go through 16 to 25. And then finally, anything, I think it's 26 and above, will go red. And there's only a handful of towns like that we can see. T18R8 up here, Eagle Lake Township. Some of these townships end up with a high number of bears. A surprising one down here. If I remember right, Gilead, yes, Gilead's I think one of our is our highest town, maybe at 33. So you'll see a handful of red ones around the state if you look close. And if you work your way up, you'll find that the majority of them are blue and green, and then we get to these little pockets of activity. So you work your way through. You do that whole map, kind of color coding out where we find bears and where we don't. Again, we talked about this the other day in class, but you'll notice a really stark kind of contrast where there are lots of people in Maine. We're talking districts 20, 21, 22, 16, 23, 25. There are not a lot of bears harvested, and what we see is typically people don't tend to create as much bear habitat the way they create deer habitat. Just slightly different needs. Although as our bear population grows, we have more and more bears on that human, wilderness interface, and more bear-human conflicts occurring. So let's imagine we got our map done. We can move on now, and we can check. There's a couple graphs we need to build here. That's going to ask us, it says use the totals from the method of take section on your data sheet to create a pie graph that illustrates the breakdown of Maine's bear harvest by method of take. We're going to talk about bait, hounds, traps, deer season, and spot and stock. And that is these columns right here. We can see hunting with bait, wild deer hunting, hunting with dogs, spot and stock, and trapping as well over here. And then we have all of our WMDs here. What we're looking for on this graph are our statewide totals for each method. So I can even highlight those just to really kind of drive home what we're looking at here. We're looking for statewide totals for each method, right? We have the first one there being hunting with bait, and then deer season, and then we have hounds. Spot and stock was 44, and then 295 by trapping. So those are the numbers we're going to use for the pie graph. And if you remember, when it comes time to build a graph, we're going to use pages. We're going to come here and we're going to go up to this plus symbol, select a new document. It doesn't matter either or here. We can use blank or landscape. Now, when it comes time to build a graph, we want to come up right here to our graph option, select this. Here we're building a pie graph. And again, it's going to drop in a graph with no title or anything. That's just, correlates the months out of the year. So we want to select edit data here. And we're going to put in our methods of harvest then. So we'll put bait, deer season. There you go. Bait, deer season, hounds, spot and spot. We'll shorten that up a little bit. And stock. And we will talk about trapping. And then finally, we want to get rid of this September column here. So I'm gonna touch it once with my finger to highlight that purple area, and then touch it again to get the little menu and delete that whole section. We only want those 5 sections, otherwise it'll leave a purple section in there with your key. So then you, and I don't want to spoil our graph here, but you would go back and you would use these totals down here for each method, and you'd pop them in over here on your graph. And there you go. You could hit done, and this is not what your graph will look like, but it will essentially, you'll have the correct percentages there if you put the numbers from the data table in. So again, I'm going to grab my key. I'm going to move this down out of the way. And I remember our last step when building any graph in Notability is we always have to turn that title on. So with our graph highlighted, I'm going to come up here and select the paintbrush, and I just need to hit this toggle for title. And there you go. Now again, we're not going to call this just bear graph, right? We're going to give this a detailed title, and we're going to tell kind of what, when, and where. We're talking about 2022 Maine Bear Harvest by method. Okay. That's a nice looking graph there. Wait till you see it with the actual data in. It gets even better. So I'm going to delete this one just to get rid of it, and we can go back now, look at our other graph. We're going to use the last 2 columns on the right-hand side of the data sheet to create a pie graph that illustrates the residency breakdown of Maine's successful bear hunters. Remember, this is successful. We talked about, the success rate of bear hunting over bait in Maine is somewhere around 30%. The majority of people will not get a bear, but this is just successful hunters. This is not all the people that come and don't get one, because there are quite a few. So we're thinking about resident versus non-resident, what we like to call out-of-staters, right? The state would refer to them as non-residents. They pay more for their hunting license fees. They pay more for their bear tag. Often they're hunting with guides and spending fees on outfitters and butchering and taxidermy. And there's quite a bit of commercial value generated by bears from non-residents, and we're going to see that right now. So again, I'm coming back here to pages. I'm going to put in a pie graph once again. But now let's take a look at our data table, and we'll see where this comes from. If we come up here to the top, we can see, there's all kinds of really interesting data here on, archery, which is kind of interesting. They don't do this with moose or anything. They kind of note how many bears are harvested with archery equipment. They talk about how many are assisted by a guide, and you can see in the end, what do we have? 3,700 bears or so, and about 2,500 are harvested with a guide. So you're talking about 2/3 of the bears or so harvested in the state of Maine are people paying guides for assistance to do this. And it kind of goes back again to that commercial value around bears in the state of Maine and bear hunting. We'll talk about some other reasons too. And if we think here, these last 2 columns are resident and non-resident. This is where we break down the residency within each district. Some of these are really interesting. Some districts you'll actually see more residents than non-residents harvesting a bear. There's some kind of interesting ones here, but for the most part, we see overall far more non-residents harvesting bears in Maine every year than residents. And that tends to surprise some people. But if we come here, our resident number is right there and our non-resident number is right there. So we are going to create a pie graph that has just 2 pieces now. So I've got my blank pie graph in there. If I touch it once, I get my menu. I'm going to hit edit data, and I'm going to delete all of these sections out. I'm deleting them by touching the colored area once and then hitting delete. And if I touch that top piece there, it gives me the option to delete each of these. So now my headers are going to be resident and non-resident. And we can, again, you can go ahead and get the data out of there and pop it in for each one. Our percentages on the correct graph will be a little different, but once again, we want to move our key out of the way, put that down here somewhere, and then with the graph selected, I'm coming up here, I'm going to hit the paintbrush, and I'm going to turn title on. And once my title's on, I can edit this thing. And again, we want when, where, and what was going on. We're talking about 2022. Maine Bear Harvest, always. This time by, residency. There you go. Nice looking graph. And we could copy paste that right in there, and bada bing, bada boom. This thing's looking nice. We got a heck of an assignment going here. So if we come back to our assignment in Google Classroom, we've got our 2 graphs built. They're going to be copy and pasted right in there, or you guys like to screenshot, you know, everybody's different. I'm old. I copy paste, okay? So your map's going to be done. You're going to see not quite the same correlation that we see with deer, but it's really interesting. It's almost a mirror image of that deer map we made. And then you have a few analysis questions that come into play here. This is a lot of stuff we talked about the other day about, you know, about natural food and weather and hunting pressure and all these things. There's some pretty obvious ones about what's the most popular method. Why do you think that's the case? Give me your thoughts there. Which areas of the state? Give me kind of broad descriptions. What are we looking at that have the greatest bear harvest? And then we talked about commercial value of bears through hunting. Do a little reflection and think, and give me a second one, a source of commercial value for black bears in Maine other than hunting. How are they worth money to our state beyond just the harvest of them and guiding and things like that? So think of one additionally beyond hunting, and then they were looking for total there. That's an easy number given to you in the data table right above. How many total bears from 2022? So there you go. You got everything you need to complete the Maine Bear Harvest analysis. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did like it, be sure to like and subscribe and turn on notifications. It really helps the channel. And until next time, guys, good luck.